Dan Burrus and...
Hi, I'm Mark Sanborn in Denver, Colorado.
All right, and what we're doing today is we're going to launch books. We have new books that are coming out. Mark is a New York Times best-selling author and leadership expert, and he's got a brand new book coming out. As a matter of fact, I'm going to hold them up. I can't see if they're in focus or not, but I think you've got it. As you can see, it's called The Potential Principle, and I love this book. I've had a chance to read it, and I think you're going to want this book. And I thought, why not do something unique? Since we're both launching books, why don't we launch them together at the same time, interview each other, and give you some key points that you can make actionable today based on this book. So there's the setup. Mark, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and the book?
Well, what I'd rather talk about is how you and I have known each other for 30 years. We have a great mutual respect for each other's work. Dan is one of, if not the top futurists in the world today. His client list is an astounding who's who of global business. And I've gotten to know him through both the National Speakers Association back so many years ago. Nobody knew who either of us were. And now we're colleagues in Speakers Roundtable. But most importantly, we both are committed to helping our clients be better at anticipating the future, better at leading. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about each of our books, but then interview each other on some of the key concepts. So Dan, you go first. Why don't you give us a quick executive overview of the Anticipatory Organization?
All right, well, thank you. Well, the subtitle of the book is How to Turn Disruption and Change into Opportunity and Advantage. And the reason I wrote this book is we're at a unique point in human history. Actually, we've never reached it before. The world's fastest supercomputer 4 years ago was disassembled 2 months ago because it was already obsolete. And we're doing things today that were impossible just 2 years ago. Over 30% of IBM's revenue is coming from things that were impossible 2 years ago. By the way, is that going to get less or more in the future? And I think you already know the answer. So that means we're going to be doing things 2 years from now that are impossible today. How'd you like to know what those are? And one of the principles I teach is if it can be done, it will be done. If you don't do it, someone else will. I think it's important to know what can be done. We have technology going at an exponential rate. Technology is driving that. It's more than just Moore's Law now, which is tied to the chips in our devices. It's really the computing ecosystem and the supercomputers in the cloud that your personal devices are tapping into. So it's gone way beyond more. With exponential change, everybody is saying, well, then we got to do exponential innovation, exponential this, exponential that. But the problem is, if you're going exponentially fast in the wrong direction, you will get into trouble exponentially faster. You need to have some direction. But there's no certainty in this world. Where's certainty? And I would say it's all around you, if you learn how to find it. You see, strategy, whether it's personal or business, based on uncertainty has high risk. Strategy based on certainty has low risk and high reward. So I want to do exponential leaps with low risk and accelerate innovation with low risks. So the reason I did the Anticipatory Organization is there's two sides to a coin. One side is agility. And you've probably heard of agile this, agile that. But remember, agility is reacting faster. The competitive advantage of agility is you have an advantage over slower competitors. And if the world, and this is not an if, as the world increases its pace exponentially, agility has less value every year. Now, I want you to be good at agility. That's why there's two sides to this coin. You need agility because you can't predict everything. The reason I wrote this book is if we are going exponentially faster, and again, it's not an if, it's a we are, that means you're going to be having so many problems. If you aren't anticipating them and pre-solving them, we are not going to be happy campers on this planet Earth. You can see every disruption that has ever disrupted if you have a methodology to do it, giving you the choice to be the disruptor or the disrupted. Frankly, I like having a choice. And thirdly, the game-changing opportunities are there for us right now when you blow the fog away. By the way, what's the fog? Hey, it's the news. And if you blow the fog away, what you have is a mountain of opportunity right there. So this book is about blowing the fog away, helping you find certainty in an uncertain world, and helping you to lastly separate what I call the hard trends. These are based on future facts. They will happen, and you cannot stop them, but you can see them ahead of time. And there are soft trends. And soft trends are the ifs and maybes. They are not based on future facts, they're based on assumptions. And by the way, an assumption has far more risk than a future fact. And you might think I don't like soft trends. Actually, I do. Spent a lot of time on it. You know why? You can change a soft trend. So I'm going to give you one example, then we'll turn this over to Mark and let him talk a little bit about his book, because I could go on and on, as you can tell, and I don't want to go on and on. But we got healthcare costs rising. I was just speaking at a major healthcare conference with CEOs there, and they're all assuming that healthcare costs will continue to rise. What are we going to do about it? But yet, is that a hard trend or a soft trend? Is that impossible to stop? Could you actually lower healthcare costs? The answer is, well, sure. But if you assume it's a future fact, all you do is figure out how you're going to try to pay for it. But if in reality, I could use transformational technology to completely transform the healthcare purchasing, logistic, supply chain. I could use blockchain to bring trust and transparency to purchasing. So instead of paying $300 for those Excedrin, you might be paying cents for those Excedrin if you only knew what they really cost. In other words, it's good to know the difference between the hard trends and the soft trends. So I'm teaching a new competency, one that we didn't need in the past, we need now, and that is how to anticipate, to drive and accelerate innovation and transform your results. Mark, I really love your book because I think most of us are coasting, frankly, and you can only coast uphill so long. So I think the potential principle is vital right now. Please tell us about it.
Well, thanks, Dan. And by the way, I wish you'd have talked to those healthcare execs. I just got an increase from $1,500 a month to $2,500 a month with a deductible of $13,000 a year for my family. So I hope we can change that soft trend sooner than later. You know, as I was listening to you, I remember thinking some people are going to think, well, these are just two guys that are friends who wrote two different books. And certainly the books are different, but they have this in common. We both wrote books to help people and individuals be better than they've been before. And that's really what the potential principle is. The principle is this: we all know how good we've become, but none of us know how good we could be. What I like to say to audiences is if I said to you today, this was the best your life would ever be, and the rest of your life would be all downhill, would you be happy? Well, I've yet to have anybody try to convince me they'd be happy if the rest of their life was all downhill, because we operate from an assumption that our relationships will be better, our enjoyment, our earning potential, all those things. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. We did some research, peer research, that found that 57% of the people we surveyed had a commitment to getting better, but only 30% had a specific plan. And Dan, just like you talked about how people need a methodology to anticipate the future, people need a plan for getting better. It doesn't happen accidentally. As a matter of fact, the only thing that gets better accidentally with age is wine. You know, the rest of us have to work at it. So in my book, basically I looked at three things. Number one is why get better? Because when I work with leaders, they sometimes have to make the case to their teams or their employees or their executive leadership team, because people make the mistake that, hey, we're already doing great, why get better? And both your book and my book points out that change in and of itself is a primary driver of the need to get better, as is competition. But the third part of it that I like to talk about is one of the best reasons to get better is because you can. It's a whole lot more interesting, a lot more fun to live your life trying to find out how good you can be rather than just maintaining whatever success you've achieved. The second part for me is looking at the four areas you can get better in. I call it the potential matrix, and that's performance, learning, thinking, and reflecting. And your book actually has a great deal about all of those quadrants. You talk about it in different ways, but we are on the same page, especially in that how we think is so important. And people don't often spend much time in that particular quadrant. And then the third part of the book is simply, what are the four breakthrough strategies? And we may talk about more than one of them, but I want to mention the one because it so closely goes back to what you said. I say you must disrupt yourself before somebody or something else does. You know, and that goes back to what you said, Dan. You're either the disruptor or you're the disruptee. And when you disrupt, you set the agenda. When you disrupt, you create the new rules. But when you're disrupted, you're playing catch up. So being able to anticipate and then become the disruptor is a lot more powerful tool than simply waiting until somebody or something disrupts you. So that's what my book's about, and my goal is simple. I want to help people who are already among the best get better, because there's only one thing that beats best, and that's better. And it's hard, because the better you become, the harder it is to get better, the more incremental and nuanced the gains are. So let's talk about what each of us are most interested in the other's book. And I want to begin by throwing a question back to you, because as you mentioned in the book, it seems outrageous. But you say take your biggest problem and skip it. What in the world does that mean?
Well, thank you. And, the book is much more than just a discussion of hard trends, certainties, and soft trends. Actually, there's 4 modules I've got in the book. One of them is to know what's next, and that's where you learn how to see those things that are predictable. And the second part is about developing opportunities. How do you find the opportunities out of that and get rid of all the could do's and should do's and get down to a few must do's? And the third one is how to transform culture using some principles that I share. And the fourth one is how to transform results. So take your biggest problem and skip it is one of those abilities to accelerate success. And whatever problem you've got, hey, that's not it. You're smart. You would have thought about it by now. You would have had an answer if you had been working on the right one. So one of the elements of the skip it principle is to know whatever that problem is, that's not it. You need to peel the onion and get down to what the real problem is, which you can completely and totally solve. Remember when I first, a number of years ago, started being an advisor to the Joint Chiefs and the head of the DOD at the Pentagon, when I first met them, I said, "What's your biggest problem?" That's a loaded question, Mark, because I already knew whatever you'd say, that wasn't it. And this is the CIO of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, which is, the biggest of them all. And he said, "My biggest problem is I got to get all my legacy technology into the cloud as quickly as possible." And I responded by saying, well, let me think here. If you get all of your legacy stuff into the cloud, won't you just have a legacy cloud? And he kind of laughed and thought, well, I guess that's not it. And we began a relationship. So the second element very quickly of skip it is there's a lot of things you think you need to do that you don't need to do at all. You could skip to move forward faster. I teach you how to do that. Thanks for asking that. And about your book, one of the things I really do admire about you, and I would like to feel that I do the same thing, is I enjoy working at getting better every year. As I continue to have birthdays, and thank goodness I'm still having them, and as I get older, I'm excited about getting older. I'm going to get really pretty good if you hang around here. You and I, and everyone listening to this, has never been smarter than you are right now. You've got more wisdom, more knowledge, more experience than you've ever had. But you also are in a box, and you've heard that you got to get out of the box. You know what? You can't get out of the box. It's called your career. You fortified it real well. I would like the box to be glass, so at least you can see through it and take some new actions. And lastly, the thing I love about your book, and I'll let you talk about it a second, and that is that change how you think, and you change your results. I don't worry about legacy technology. You know what I worry about? Legacy thinking. So both of us are dedicated to not tell you what to think. Neither of us have the right to tell you what to think, but we can change how you think. And if we can change how you think, which is our goal here, we can elevate your future. Mark, talk a little bit about the reason that they need to get this book right now, because I think you need to get this book right now. Let's hear it from the author.
Well, one of the things I focus on is metacognition, which is thinking about thinking. And to make it real simple, I would ask those listening, how do you know what you know? If you go deep, deep, deep into philosophy, and I don't encourage it, and I have not gone this deep, but it's called epistemology, which is really the question of philosophy of how you know anything. Is this a matrix-like world where everything's an illusion and we're just players, behind the scenes? Or do we have some semblance of control, interaction, and the ability to create a future? Well, thinking about thinking is simply about how to make your thinking better and more accurate and more productive. How to bring it into alignment with reality so that when you act on an idea, that idea is a powerful result rather than a misguided effort. And we've become so dependent on letting others think for us. And sometimes, we have to do that. I let my dentist think about my teeth and my dental health. I let my doctor think about my physical health. But when it comes to deciding, what to do in my business or what policy I should support on a board that I serve on, or what direction we should be going politically, we have to do the hard work of thinking for ourselves. And I call it in the book Rodin think. Rodin is famous for his sculpture, The Thinker. And everybody thinks they know that the thinker is simply to remind us how important thinking is. Wow, why would you take a big block of rock and spend all your time to make a great sculpture to remind us of something that obvious? So if you really look at the thinker, if you look at where his hand is on his chin and that right elbow is at the end of his left knee and he's hunched forward, and if you get a good look, you'll see that the veins in his neck are standing out, the sinews in his muscle are stressed. What Rodin was saying is that thinking hard is difficult, and that's why most people don't do it. The sculpture was originally called The Poet, and it was supposed to be about Dante. And he believed, Rodin, that one of the things that made Dante a wonderful thinker and a poet was his willingness to think harder. And Isaac Asimov wrote more than 500 books, before he died, which is astounding because 26% of Americans didn't even read a single book last year. But he wrote 500 books. And somebody said, how do you do it? And he said, I think and I think and I think so hard I want to kill myself. Now, obviously, that was a metaphor, but he really stripped it down to the essence that super productivity, the ability to anticipate the future, the ability to create what most people consider extraordinary results is about your ability to think harder and better and clearer than others. And of course, in your book, when you talk about soft trends, hard trends, skipping the biggest problem, you're addressing what so many people aren't thinking about. And then, of course, you and I both know that the connected tissue between thinking and results is action. Not enough to be aware if you don't take action. So let's throw it back to you, Dan. Why don't we start to wrap up here with the answer to this question in your book? What's one actionable idea? Hopefully they'll get your book when it comes out. My book's just out, so they can get it right now. But what's one actionable idea, whether or not they read the book, they'll benefit from taking right now?
Well, why didn't a cab driver think of Uber? Why didn't Marriott think of Airbnb? And I'll tell you why. You know why? They were all busy executing. As a matter of fact, BlackBerry was quite good at execution as well. I'm saying, what are you executing? In order to speed up, are you willing to slow down and think? And that's what we're both trying to say here. So what I would like you to do is to take 1 hour a week. And by the way, that's doable. Whether you read my book or not, I don't care. Look, take 1 hour a week. And if you don't put this in your calendar and make it an appointment with yourself, it will not happen. You'll be a crisis manager putting out another fire. I want you in this case to be an opportunity manager of your business and of your life. That's what we both want. And in that hour, what I'd like you to do is to ask, instead of all the things you're uncertain about, what are the things I'm certain about? Instead of all the things you can't do, what are the things I can do? What are the things that I can not just change but transform? What are the ways that I can not just inform but really communicate? What are the ways that I can really collaborate instead of just cooperate? And those are all things that you can learn how to do, and what you will find is that hour will pay off really well. If you'd like to find out more, my book is for sale, Anticipatory Organization. You could go to Amazon if you'd like. You can go to and type into your browser theaobook.com, and you can go and get some other little goodies in there if you'd like. Either way, I don't care. I think you'd like that book because reacting isn't working that good anymore. Try anticipating. Mark, how about you?
Well, first of all, if you get his book, you'll like his book. I read his book. I enjoyed his book. I hope that you'll consider this, because my one tip from the book is think who before you think how. Very often when we have a problem or something we're trying to do, we try to figure out how to do it without first asking who already knows. And when you think who before you think how, you'll cut days and weeks of learning off your learning curve. For instance, if you want to learn about a new subject, don't just go out to your local bookstore and look what's on the shelves. Do a little research and find out what's the seminal book, what's the leading expert in that area, so that you won't just read books, you'll read the best books. It can even help in your personal lives. My son's car has a dead battery, and of course that creates a little bit of challenge of how do you, go get it fixed, or how do you get the battery to bring it back and fix it. So I have a friend that owns a car dealership, and I always ask him, hey, what's the easiest way to get this done? Now, I could figure it out. It's not a complex problem that requires reading either of our books, but there's always something to be gained from an insider. And if you think who knows already, that will help you implement the how more accurately and a whole lot more quickly. You can find out more about my book at potentialprinciple.com. Potentialprinciple.com. If you go there now, there's a link. You can get a signed copy of the book at a discount. And Dan's already told you how to find out about his book. I personally think, now obviously Dan and I are a little biased here, but I personally think both books would be great reads. In no particular order, read Dan's book, then mine, my book, then Dan's. And if you had a good idea, if you took something away from the book, I know we're always interested to hear what that big takeaway was. So please go to our respective websites and send us an email about what you learned. So Dan, why don't you wrap us up here, and we'll wish everybody safe travels and good work.
All right. Well, you can let the future just unfold, or you can actively shape a better future for yourself, your family, and for others. That's what we are both dedicated to doing. I believe you're absolutely right, Mark. They are really bookends. This wasn't just a happen chance that we decided to work together on this. So you know what you need to do? Take action, because if you don't, someone else will. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.